Hi guys, and in today's video we're going to be going over tremolo picking. And tremolo picking, for those of you who don't know, is basically when you play really fast with your right hand, but you're only going to be like playing one note with your left hand rather than playing lots of notes. So it kind of sounds like this. So tremolo picking is a really useful tool to have in your arsenal of techniques. It is really useful for solos, and it's more commonly used in metal and maybe post-rock with a ton of delay and reverb stuck on the end of it. So let's jump into what we should be considering when we're tremolo picking. So considering that we're going to be picking really fast, it would be a good idea to consider what kind of pick we're going to be using. So I use a 1.1mm thick pick, and that's quite rigid, so it will give the sound of the attack, there will be a lot more attack in the sound, rather than if I was to use a thinner pick, there'd be a lot less attack. It'd sound kind of a bit thinner. Another thing to think about is the positioning of the pick on the string. So I'm going to jump a bit closer to explain my point to you. So the angle that you're picking at is another thing that you need to consider. So one thing that you can do is to pick the string dead on, kind of like this, with the pick being parallel to the string. Another thing you can do is tilt your wrist a bit and play at more of an angle. This will give you more speed, but also less attack. So that's something you've got to consider and find the right balance for what works for the sound you're trying to achieve, and how fast you want to play your tremolo picking. Something else we have to take a look at is where the motion of our picking is coming from. So there are three potential places we can be picking from. We can move our elbow, we can move our wrist, and we can move our thumb like that. So I'd recommend using your wrist, because your wrist will not tire out as quickly as your elbow and your thumb. Also, your elbow, when you're switching between strings, you might want to move that as well. So let's jump into some actual tremolo picking. So the exercises I've got for you today are going to be based around this F sharp minor arpeggio. And one other thing you're going to need is a metronome to practice with. And let's jump straight into it. So our first exercise, we're just going to be picking one note. So we're going to be picking the F sharp, which is the 9th fret on the A string, and we are going to be picking 2 bars worth of eighth notes, then 2 bars worth of 8th note triplets, then 2 bars worth of 16th notes, then 2 bars worth of 16th note triplets, then 2 bars worth of 32nd notes, and then we're going to be coming back down again. 16th note triplets, then 16th notes, then 8th note triplets, then 8th notes again. So let me give you an example with my metronome so you can hear exactly how this is going to sound. So it should sound like this. Now, I had the click at 85 beats per minute there. You might want to start a bit slower than that. You want to make sure you can play it comfortably without any tension in your wrist. That is really essential, because if your wrist seizes up, you're not going to be able to continue playing. So another thing you need to think about is try and keep your motions as small as possible. You don't want to be making these big motions because that's not going to be economic or efficient. You're going to be wasting energy moving back and forth like this. So these small movements are going to really help you out. Next, you are going to want to play the same exercise, but we're going to be playing with 2 strings this time. So we're going to be playing the 9th fret on the A string and the 7th fret of the D string. And I won't play the whole exercise, but it will sound like this. And then you want to move on to 3 strings as well. Cool, so that would be the 9th fret of the A string, the 7th fret of the D string, and the 6th fret of the G string. Next, you're going to want to practice playing melodies over multiple strings. So, first of all, I want you to play this arpeggio up and down, picking 4 times per note. So, for example, and use a metronome again with that. Pay attention to the motion of your wrist here. So when you're picking down the strings, your wrist will probably move like that, and that's completely natural, but that also means that your pick is going to be more angled as you get higher up the strings, to the higher strings, which means less attack, which might not be beneficial for you if you want attack. A thing you can do to remedy that is to pick but then move your elbow so that your pick stays at the same angle throughout the whole exercise. Another thing that you want to practice is string skipping. So if you take this arpeggio and play the A string 9th fret, play 4 notes of that, then play the 6th fret of the G string 4 times. Then we're going to move to the D string and play the 7th fret 4 times, and then the 7th fret 4 times of the B string. So altogether so far we have, and then we're going to move to the 6th fret of the G string, and then the 9th fret of the E string. So altogether we have, and practice that with a metronome, see how fast you can get at that. Just remember again, try and make sure your wrist is completely relaxed as possible. If it starts seizing up a bit, I'd recommend taking a break for a few minutes and then going back to it again. But please don't overdo it. If you start feeling pain, then completely stop practicing and then come back to it the next day. Just go to another thing to practice. One last thing you want to practice is starting with an upstroke. So all these exercises we've been doing so far have been starting on downstrokes, but it's useful to start on an upstroke because you never know, you may be doing a sweep picking pattern, and now you need to, because that last note was a down pick, you might need to tremolo pick all the way back up, starting on upstrokes. So that's another thing to practice as well. And also, again, with that, use a metronome and slowly build your speed, and make sure you're comfortable at all times. So that was my video on tremolo picking. I hope you enjoyed that. Please let me know how it's gone for you in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to my channel because there'll be loads more videos, and I'll see you in the next video.